You are watching the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support. The Humanities 101 Foundation welcomes you.
Welcome back, Nacho Knots. Let's take a second to settle in before we get going, okay? No big ritual, just a small pause before we start. So if you can, unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders a notch, and give yourself permission to be here as you are. I want to open with a line that's been on my mind lately because it cuts through so much of the comparison noise that we swim in daily. Here's the quote. There's nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is in being superior to your former self. Ernest Hemingway said this, and I love how this reframes the whole idea of progress. It doesn't ask us to compare. It doesn't ask us to outrun anyone. It simply asks us to look back at who we were and consider what it would mean to grow from there with honesty, with steadiness, and with care. Because being nobler than your former self is not about becoming flawless. It's about becoming more aware. It's about noticing the patterns you used to run on autopilot and choosing, even in small ways, a different step. Not because you're trying to win, but because you're trying to become. You're trying to build a life that fits you better, a life with less self-betrayal, a life where you can breathe more freely inside of your own skin. And sometimes that kind of nobility looks very, very unglamorous. It looks like pausing before you snap and finding one calmer, quieter sentence. It looks like recognizing that you're spiraling and choosing regulation over rumination. It looks like apologizing without collapsing into shame. It looks like setting a boundary not with anger, but with clarity. It looks like doing the brave work of asking for help earlier than you used to. And these are not public victories, but they are real victories. These are the moments where your future self starts getting built. And this is also why I think Hemingway's line connects to the larger work of becoming. Because becoming is not one big transformation. It is accumulation. It's the slow stacking of those small choices that align with your life and your values. And it's the practice of returning to yourself when you drift. It's learning to tell the difference between who you are and what you have been carrying. It's building integrity with your own needs. It's choosing the next right thing, even when the next thing is simply rest. And for neurodivergent minds, this matters in a very particular way. Because so many of us grew up being measured against norms that were never designed with our nervous system in mind. We were taught to interpret struggle as failure and difference as deficiency. But nobility in this sense is refusing that story. It's deciding that growth does not have to mean masking harder. It can mean unmasking safely. It can mean building systems that support you. It can mean learning your cues, honoring your limits, and making room for your real strengths. It can mean becoming more of you, not less. So today, we are not chasing superiority. We are practicing the kind of nobility Ernest Hemingway is pointing towards. The kind that is private, real, and sustainable. The kind that says, I don't need to be above anyone. I just want to be a little more grounded than I used to be, a little more honest than I used to be, and a little more kind to myself along the way. So with that in mind, let's get into it. And this is the perfect moment to bring into the season that we're actually living in right now. Because for a lot of us, we're arriving at the end of the first half of the semester, and that stretch can feel like a long uphill climb. The early momentum has worn off, the deadlines have started stacking, and even good routines can start to wobble under the weight of one more thing. So if you've been feeling tired, scattered, or a little more reactive than usual, I want you to hear this clearly. This does not mean that you are failing. It often just means you've been carrying a lot. And this is where the idea of being nobler than your former self gets very practical. Nobility right now might not look like powering through at maximum output. It might look like noticing your capacity earlier than you used to. It might look like choosing a smarter plan instead of a harsher one. It might look like asking a question sooner, starting a task in smaller pieces, or giving yourself permission to do the next right step instead of trying to do everything at once. And the good news is that spring break is on the horizon, not as an escape or as a finish line, but as a built-in pause, a chance to reset your nervous system and rebalance your rhythm. So even if your spring break is busy, even if you're working or helping family or catching up on life, it can still be a marker in time, a reminder that rest is not a reward for perfection. It's part of becoming, and it's part of staying human. So as we head into these next couple weeks, I want to frame this stretch as a transition, not a crisis. A chance to finish this half of the semester with steadiness and to use spring break as a gentle recalibration. Not to become someone else, but to come back to yourself. And if we zoom out just a little bit, the calendar is telling the same story your body is probably already living. March is that in-between season. In Michigan, it's thaw and freeze, thaw and freeze. One day the sun hits your face and you think, okay, we are turning a corner, and the next day the wind reminds you not so fast. It can feel confusing, even emotionally, like you want to move forward, but part of you is still bracing. But that back and forth is not failure. It's transition. It's what change looks like when it is real. The ground softens and then hardens. The ice retreats and then returns. And in the middle of that, something is still happening underneath the surface. The world is reorganizing itself for spring, and so are we. Even when it is still cold, our bodies start to shift. Our minds start to waken up in little flashes. Our souls start to crave light and movement and fresh air and new beginnings. You might notice it as restlessness. You might notice it as a longing to clean, to simplify, to get outside, to start over, to work out. You might notice it as hope showing up quietly, not as a grand feeling, but as a small urge towards change. So if March feels like a mix of exhaustion and emergence, that makes sense. If you feel like you're not fully one thing or the other yet, that makes sense too. This is a month where you don't have to be done. You just have to keep listening, keep adjusting, keep taking one steady step at a time. Because becoming is seasonal. It's not linear. It's not constant forward motion. It's thaw and freeze, thaw and freeze, thaw and freeze. And then almost without you noticing, the air changes, the light lingers longer, and you realize you are standing in a new chapter. So as we close out this first half of the semester and move towards spring break, let March be what it is: a bridge, a messy, honest, hopeful bridge. And if your only job right now is to make it to the other side with your dignity and your nervous system intact, that is not a small thing. That is the work. That is becoming. And I want to name something important here because I think a lot of us carry a quiet fear about change. For many people, recalibration can feel like denial. Like if you slow down, you're avoiding. If you rest, you're giving up. If you shift your plan, you're admitting defeat. And if you choose a new approach, some part of you wonders if you're trying to erase the past or pretend it didn't happen. But this is not what recalibration is. Recalibration is not hiding from your story. It's honoring your story. It's looking honestly at what you've been carrying and saying, I'm not going to keep paying for this in the same way. It's not pretending the hard part didn't happen. It's deciding they will not get to write the ending alone. Change, at its best, is a form of truth-telling. It's a conscious choice to respond differently now that you know more, now that you've lived more, now that you can see what drains you, what helps you regulate, what patterns you keep repeating, and what you're ready to loosen your grip on. And that's not denial. It's growth. That's a person learning how to live their life with greater wisdom and tenderness and care. And spring, symbolically, gives us permission to do this without shame, because spring does not arrive by erasing winter. Spring arrives because winter happened, and the world kept turning, and the soil did its work, and the roots held on. Spring does not deny the freeze. It simply insists that the freeze is not the final word. So when you make a spring choice, you're not betraying your past self. You are caring for them. You are taking what they survived and building something steadier from it. You're saying, thank you for getting me here. I got it from here. And that's the act of profound respect. And yes, spring can bring hope, but not always as fireworks. Sometimes hope is just the willingness to try again. Sometimes hope is the slightly softer inner voice. Sometimes hope is choosing one small habit that makes tomorrow easier. Sometimes hope is realizing you do not have to become a different person altogether. You just have to become a more supported person. So if you are in a season of thaw and freeze, and you're feeling the tug towards change, let it be a conscious choice, not a panic move, not a disappearance or an escape, not a performance, but a choice, a spring choice. The kind that says, I'm allowed to grow, I'm allowed to adjust, and I'm allowed to start again without apologizing for needing a new way forward. So let's bring this home with a weekly discussion question, one that connects the Hemingway quote, the end of the semester stretch, and this March season of thaw and freeze, thaw and freeze. So here it is. What is one small way you could be nobler than your former self this week? Not by pushing harder, but by recalibrating with intention. And to help you answer, you might sit with one of these prompts. Where have I been measuring myself against someone else when I really need to measure myself against my own growth? What is one pattern I want to loosen this week, even if only slightly? What is one boundary, support, or small adjustment that would make this week more sustainable? If spring is a season of hope, what would hope in action look like for me in the next 7 days? What would it look like to honor my past without letting it steer the whole car? If you want, share your answer with us in the comments or in the community space, even if just one sentence. One small, honest sentence is enough. Because this is how becoming happens. Not in grand declarations, but in real choices, repeated gently. And I want to slow down with that question for a moment because it's easy to hear it and immediately turn it into a performance. It's easy to think, okay, I need a big goal, a big breakthrough, a dramatic reinvention. But this is not what we're doing here. We're not asking for a highlight reel. We're asking for the truer next step. Being nobler than your former self is often less about adding something and more about subtracting what is no longer serving you. It might be choosing not to spiral for the 3rd hour in a row. It might be choosing not to send the text while you're flooded. It might be choosing not to punish yourself with the all or nothing thinking. Sometimes the noblest thing you can do is interrupt a familiar pattern gently and say, not today. I'm going to do this differently now. And notice the way the question is framed. Not by pushing harder, but by recalibrating with intention. And that matters, because pushing harder is what we do when we are scared, when we are behind, when we feel judged, when we think our value is on the line. Recalibrating is what we do when we are awake. It's what we do when we're learning. It's what we do when we finally accept that our nervous system is part of the equation, not an inconvenience we're supposed to override. So if you're listening right now and you're tired, the answer does not have to be do more. Your answer might be, I'm going to build a week that I can actually survive. That's nobility. That's maturity. That's becoming. A plan that respects your capacity is not laziness, it's wisdom. And for some of you, the nobler version of yourself this week might be the one who stops negotiating with shame. The one who doesn't wait until you feel worthy to take care of yourself. The one that doesn't require perfection before you allow rest or food or support or kindness. You don't have to earn your humanity. You are already human. The question is simply, what would it look like to treat yourself like that is true? And if March is thaw and freeze, your answer might be a thaw choice, a softening choice, a choice that lets a little more light in. Maybe it's cleaning one small corner of your space, not as self-punishment, but as self-respect. Maybe it's opening a window for 5 minutes. Maybe it's stepping outside between classes and letting the sun hit your face. Maybe it's making the next assignment smaller and more doable. Maybe it's emailing for clarification instead of disappearing, or choosing the next right step, not the whole staircase. Because hope is not just a feeling, it's a practice. It's a decision to act as if change is possible, even if you cannot feel it yet. And every time you choose a kinder path, a clearer boundary, a more sustainable plan, you are voting for your future self. You are becoming someone who does not have to be rescued from your own life. You are becoming someone who knows how to come back to center. So take a moment after this episode, even if 2 minutes, and answer honestly. Not what sounds impressive, but what is real. What is one small way you could be nobler than your former self this week? Not by pushing harder, but by recalibrating with intention. And once you start thinking that way, you can feel how naturally it opens into something bigger. Because recalibration is not just a strategy, it's a form of hope. And hope is often misunderstood. We treat it like a mood or a vibe, like a warm feeling that either shows up or doesn't. But the kind of hope that actually carries people through hard seasons is not primarily a feeling. It's a posture. It's a way of facing your life that says, this is not the end of the story. Even when you're tired, even when the weather is still doing what March weather does. Even when you're staring down deadlines and responsibilities, and the parts of yourself you are still learning how to live with. Hope is the quiet decision to keep building. And I want to be honest about this too. Hope is not denial. Hope does not pretend everything is fine. It doesn't ignore grief or burnout or trauma or the real constraints of your life. Hope looks directly at what is true and still says, I can take one more step. It says I can try again in a small way. I can ask for help. I can choose something different than what I chose last time. And that's hope with a spine, which means hope can be very ordinary. It can look every day. It can look like making a plan for the week that includes rest on purpose. Hope can look like turning into something that is good enough, turning it in, like a midterm maybe, instead of waiting for perfection. Hope can look like returning to a routine after you've fallen off without making it a moral crisis or a value judgment. Hope can look like sending the email, scheduling the appointment, taking the walk, drinking the water, eating something that grounds you, or letting yourself go to bed without bargaining for one more hour of scrolling. Hope is not always loud, and it's not always immediate. Sometimes hope arrives as a small inner nudge that says, try a different approach. Sometimes it arrives as a relief when you finally admit this is not working and you choose to change it. Sometimes it arrives when you stop comparing your insides to everyone else's outsides and you remember that you are allowed to have a humane pace. And in this March season, hope also has a rhythm. It matches the thaw and freeze. It comes in flashes. It warms you and then it disappears. Then it comes back again. And that's normal. That's what hope looks like when it's growing roots instead of just lighting up the sky. So as we move forward, I want you to hold hope differently. Not as something you must feel, but as something you can practice. Something you can choose in small ways. A steady, intentional turning towards life. A spring choice again and again until one day you look up and realize that the season has changed. And if we're going to talk about hope with honesty, we also have to talk about the moments when hope feels far away. The moments when your mind is tired, your body is overloaded, and your calendar looks like a wall instead of a path. In those seasons, hope can feel like a luxury word, something that other people get to have, but not you. And if that's where you are right now, I want to say this gently. You are not broken. You are in weather because life has weather. We have internal winters. We have long weeks. We have stretches where the sky feels low and the air feels heavy. And the mistake we make is thinking that if we are in a storm, the storm must be permanent. That if we cannot feel hope right now, hope must be gone. But this is where another Hemingway quote meets us with a little more tenderness. The rain will stop. The night will end. The hurt will fade. Hope is never so lost that it can't be found. There's something quietly grounding about that, not because it promises instant relief and not because it pretends that pain is simple, but because it reminds us that seasons move. The rain does not last forever. The night does not get to keep the sky. Hurt, even deep hurt, can soften over time, and hope, even if it's buried, is not necessarily gone. Sometimes it's just hidden under exhaustion. Sometimes it's tucked behind fear. Sometimes it's waiting for you to take one small step towards the light. And that's the key, I think, for our kind of hope. Hope is not always something you discover. Sometimes it's something you practice until you find it again. So if you're in the rain, your job is not to pretend that you're dry. Your job is to stay oriented, to remember that the weather is real, but it's not the whole reality. To do small things that keep you anchored. Eat something, drink water, check the next deadline, ask the question, take the break, turn the assignment into a smaller piece, text a friend, step outside for a moment, put your feet on the floor, and feel the room you are in. Those are hope behaviors. Those are the ways that we keep the thread in our hand even when the path is hard to see. And if the night is still here for you, that doesn't mean the morning is not coming. It means you're in the part of the story where you conserve your energy, where you stop demanding constant brightness from yourself, and where you choose the most human version of progress. The version where you keep going without abandoning yourself. Because hope is not the absence of hurt. Hope is the belief that hurt is not the final chapter. Hope is the refusal to make permanent conclusions from temporary darkness. Hope is the courage to say, I do not know exactly where this resolves yet or how it resolves, but I'm still here. I'm still becoming. So when we pair these Hemingway ideas together, something powerful happens. True nobility is being superior to your former self, and hope is never so lost that it can't be found. That is the whole arc of becoming. A person who keeps choosing a truer next step, even in imperfect weather, trusting that the seasons can change, trusting that the rain will stop, trusting that the night will end, and trusting that you can find hope again, not because life is easy, but because you're learning how to live it with care. And maybe the gentle way to ease out of this is to remember that you don't have to carry hope at full volume all the time. You're allowed to carry it like a small candle instead of a spotlight. A small flame is still light. It still counts. If you cannot feel hopeful today, you can still practice hopeful actions. You can still make the choice that protects tomorrow. You can still take one small step that your future self will thank you for. And that's not pretending, it's planting. And if you're in that March rhythm of thaw and freeze, let your expectations match the season. Some days you will feel energy and clarity. Some days you will feel fog. And that doesn't mean you're going backwards. It means you're changing in a way that is real, the way that the earth changes, the way that the body changes, and the way that learning actually works. So hold this softly. You're not behind. You are a process. The rain will stop. The night will end. The hurt will fade. And in the meantime, nobility can look like this: staying honest, staying gentle, and choosing one small, steady act of becoming. So as we come in for a landing today, I just want to thank you for spending this time with me. And if your week feels like that thaw and freeze, if you've been carrying a lot, or if you've felt a little quiet lately, I hope you leave this episode with one steady reminder. You are in process. The rain won't last forever, and you don't have to become all at once. One small intentional step is enough. So remember, if this episode helped you, here are a few simple ways to support the show and help this work reach the people who need it most. Follow the show so you don't miss next week's episode. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, a rating or a quick review helps more than you might think. If someone came to mind while you're listening, share this episode with them. Send it to them, send them a clip. That's how we keep building community, one person at a time. If you're in a position to support the work, even a small donation helps keep NACHOS growing and helps fund the broader Humanities 101 Foundation work. No pressure, just gratitude. The fact that you are here already matters. One more note, though, before we wrap up. April is Autism Awareness Month, and I have several training sessions and lunch and learns already booked for the calendar. So if your workplace, school, library, nonprofit, or community organization wants to bring in a practical, human, neuro-affirming session, I would love to work with you. You can reach out through humanities101.org, and we'll find a format that fits for you, either virtual or in person. And we can build a more neuro-affirming future together. So as we come in for a landing, let's gather what we've learned, and let's tie it back to a reminder and understanding that changes everything. We started with Hemingway's simple reframe that true nobility is not being above anyone else. It's being a little more grounded, a little more honest, and a little more whole than the version of you yesterday. And that's a core NACHOS theme right there. We don't have to measure human value by comparison. We measure growth by care, clarity, and the small choices that help us live with more dignity and less self betrayal. We talked about the end of the first half of the semester and how this stretch can make your nervous system feel like it's running at capacity. And this is the place where we practice compassion plus strategy. Not push harder, but recalibrate. Not white knuckle it, but build a plan that respects your actual body and actual brain. That's neuroaffirmation in action. That, you're not lazy for needing support. You're human. And you are allowed to design your week like you matter. We also named March for what it is. A season of thaw and freeze, the messy, muddy middle where the world is changing underneath the surface. And that's another NACHOS theme. Becoming is seasonal, not linear. Some weeks are brighter, some weeks are heavy. Many are both. And the point is not to force constant forward motion, but to stay oriented to what is true and keep taking the next steady step. And then we widen the lens to hope, not as a mood, but as a practice. The rain will stop, the night will end, the hurt will fade. Hope is never so lost that it cannot be found. In the NACHOS world, hope is not denial. Hope is regulation. Hope is the small decision to try again in a humane way. It is choosing one doable action that keeps you connected to your future self. So if you take one thing from this episode, let it be this. You do not have to become all at once. You just have to keep returning to yourself with gentleness, with honesty, and with the belief that the season can change. So here's the line I want you to carry with you as you step back into your life today. Keep it small, keep it honest, and keep becoming. So I want you to hear these affirmations slowly, not as positive thinking, but as truth you can practice. I do not need to be better than anyone else to be worthy. This connects to the heart of Hemingway's reminder. Your value is not a ranking. You are not in competition with the people around you. When you stop measuring yourself against others, you free up energy for the kind of growth that is real and sustainable. I can be nobler than my former self in one small choice today. Nobility is not a dramatic reinvention. It's the moment you pause instead of spiraling, the moment you ask for clarification instead of disappearing, the moment you take the next right step instead of trying to do everything at once. Small choices are how becoming happens. Recalibration is not failure. It is wisdom. As the semester stretches and the pressure rises, it's easy to think that you have to push harder, but you're allowed to adjust. You're allowed to build a plan that fits your nervous system. A kinder strategy is not avoidance, it's maturity. I'm allowed to be in a season of thaw and freeze. March teaches us this. Change is rarely clean. Some days you feel momentum and some days you feel stuck. And that doesn't mean that you're going backward. It means that you're transitioning. Your growth can be uneven and still be real. The rain will stop, the night will end, and hope can be found again. This is not a promise that pain is simple. It's a reminder that weather moves. If hope feels far away, you can practice hope through one small action, one email, one break, one glass of water, one boundary, one step outside, one reset. Hope is not always a feeling. Sometimes it's a choice. Take what you need from these affirmations and feel free to leave the rest. If one line felt like it tugged on you a little, hold on to that one this week. You don't have to repeat it perfectly or believe it at full volume. Just let it sit with you. like a small light you can come back to when the day gets heavy. And as you head back into your week now, go gently. Keep it simple. Keep it honest. If all you can do is one small act of becoming, that is enough. So until next week, take care of yourself and each other, and I will see you then, Nacho Nuts.
Thank you for joining us. See you next week. The views and opinions expressed in this video are solely those of the creator and do not reflect the views of any institution, employer, or affiliated organization.